Okay, let's get started with the harmonic system, chapter 10. So we'll start this off by talking about the harmonic system in major keys, and later on we'll get to minor keys. So in this chapter, you'll learn how to choose chords to fit a melody. And the logic in the harmonic system will help you in making your own chord choices. So let's start off by examining a couple of tunes. How about Down in the Valley on page 247 and My Hat on page 261. So go ahead and check those out, and then let's move on to slide 2. So if you notice in How about Down in the Valley, there are really only two chords, right? We have a G chord and a D7 chord. Okay, and if you looked at My Hat, you would notice what chords are in that. Well, there's only two there also, but these ones are C and G7, right? So go ahead and also listen to these songs by clicking on the link here on slide 2. So you can get an even better idea. Then, thinking a little further about this, at first glance, it might not be easy to see the similarity between the chords for these two songs, right? But the illustration here on slide 3 clearly shows that the two chords are built on the tonic and the dominant. Remember, the dominant is the 5th scale degree in both songs, right? So both songs have tonic and dominant chord relationships. So if we look at the chords for Down in the Valley, G and D7, right? G is the chord built on the tonic, right? And we're going to just call that a tonic chord. But if we go up the scale, right, the G major scale, remember, that's the one with 1 sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. What's the 5th scale degree? That's D, right, the dominant. If we build a chord on that, we get our D7 chord. Okay, and then in the key of C, right, it's still going to be a tonic and dominant, just now since it's a different scale, they're going to be different chords, but they're the same types of chords. So you've got C chord for your tonic, and then remember in the C scale, what's the 5th scale degree? C, D, E, F, G, right? And if we build a chord on that, right, we stack those thirds like we learned about in the last chapter, then we get a G7 chord. Okay, so these chords based on the tonic and dominant are the most common chords in music based on major and minor scales. Okay, so tonic and dominant, the most common chords that you'll find. Okay. Moving on here, let's talk about a little something called Roman numeral analysis. So this is something we're going to get into a little bit here. If you take a music theory class, you're going to encounter this in much more detail. So this is just kind of a real intro, a little light introduction to Roman numeral analysis. So chords are labeled according to the scale degree of their roots. Kind of like we were just talking about with that tonic and dominance stuff, right? We have a tonic chord built on the tonic note of the scale, right? The 1st scale degree, and then we have a dominant chord built on the dominant note of the scale, right? Which is the 5th scale degree. Okay, so to make the distinction between the scale degree and the chord, we use Roman numerals for all the chords. Okay, so the tonic chord in Roman numeral analysis will be labeled, it looks like an I in Roman numerals, right? But we call it a 1, right? So the tonic chord might also be referred to as a 1 chord. And the dominant chord will be labeled a 5, right? A Roman numeral 5, which looks like a V, as you can see here on slide 4. Okay, and if we need a 7th chord, we're just going to put that little superscript 7 next to the next to the Roman numeral. So we see here we have our tonic in the key of G major. We got our tonic that's going to be labeled with a 1. It looks like an I in Roman numeral language. And then we have a for our dominant, our 5 chord, which is here in this case a dominant 7 chord, looks like that 5-7. Okay, moving on here. A little bit more about Roman numeral analysis. So the key will be indicated in Roman numeral analysis by its letter name followed by a colon. So we see here on slide 5, underneath the staff on the left-hand side, you see a GM, right? And that stands for the key of G major. And so when chords are labeled with Roman numerals, the result is called Roman numeral analysis, right? So if we say do a Roman numeral analysis on down in the valley, right? You do these 1s or 5-7s, right? For those G or D7 chords, right? So remember in the last chapter we learned about popular music symbols. So the Roman numerals, Roman numeral analysis, it's kind of a different way to analyze chords. Okay, and this analysis will help you to further understand the structure of harmony. Okay, so that's why we're kind of doing it. Okay, moving on here to slide 6. So triads can be built on each scale degree as shown here, right? So what we see here is a C major scale, right? The bottom note of each of these triads is the C major scale. And we have a chord built on each scale degree. So we have on the first scale degree, right? We have this chord, it's a C chord, and then we have a D minor, that's our 2 chord, and then on the third scale degree, that's going to be E minor, and then we have the 4th scale degree will be F major, and then the 5th scale degree will be G major, 6th scale degree A minor, 7th scale degree is going to be B diminished, okay, and then finally the 8th scale degree, we're back to C, right, our tonic chord again. So if you can play each of these triads, right, it's just all white keys. If you have a keyboard, you're just kind of moving up the scale one by one here. Note that 3 triad qualities are represented, right? We have major, we have minor, and here's another minor, then major, major, minor, diminished, and then major again. Okay, moving on to slide 7. So the quality of triads is shown in Roman numerals now, right? So this here we see on slide 7 the same chords I just played on slide 6, but now with Roman numerals. So major triads, right, they get an uppercase Roman numeral, right? So with major scales, we're going to have a major triad on the 1st, 4th, and 5th scale degrees, right? And then minor triads use lowercase numerals, right? So we're going to have minor triads on the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th scale degrees. Diminished triads will have this little kind of degree sign. It'll be like a lowercase Roman numerals, but with a degree sign. And we're going to have that one on the 7th scale degree, okay? So again, here's a Roman numeral analysis for each of the triads in C major, right? So you have our 1 chord, major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, 7 diminished, and 1 again, major. Okay, a little bit more about Roman numeral analysis here. So if you look at the chords for Lullaby by Brahms on page 259, and you do a Roman numeral analysis of these chords, you will see 3 different Roman numerals in this song, right? You'll see 1, 4, and 5, 7. Okay, so the 4 chord is known as the subdominant chord. And this name comes from the fact that the 4th scale degree, right, we call the subdominant, is a perfect 5th below the tonic, whereas the dominant is a perfect 5th above. So taking, how about the key of G here that we see on slide 8, our tonic chord is G, right? And it's built on the 1st scale degree, of course, G. And then what's our dominant chord here? The one built on the 5th scale degree is going to be D, right? And then our 4 chord is going to be C, right? And it's built on the 4th scale degree, C. Now, I think the easiest way to think about this is just remember the subdominant is the 4th scale degree, okay? What they're saying here is that this name subdominant comes from the fact if you go 5 below the tonic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you end up on the 4th scale degree, which is C in this case, although I know that's probably a little bit more confusing than it needs to be. So just think subdominant, 4th scale degree, and you'll be fine. Okay, let's now talk about primary chords. So the tonic, dominant, and subdominant chords are known as the primary chords. Okay, so the tonic, remember that's the 1 chord, the dominant, that's the 5 chord, and subdominant, that's going to be the 4th chord, or the 4 chord, the one built on the 4th scale degree. So most simple melodies can be harmonized with only these 3 chords, right? So perhaps let's take a couple examples here. So listen to Silent Night, right? And check it out on page 198, right? And then also listen to Cielito Lindo on page 245, okay? And I have a link here to those on slide 10. And keep in mind that although these songs are in different keys with different chords, the Roman numerals show that they are harmonized using 3 primary chords, right? Our 1, 4, and 5 chords. So Roman numeral analysis is a valuable method for showing the underlying similarity in chord choice in melodies in a variety of keys, okay? So even though this version of Silent Night on page 198 is, right, it's in the key of C, right? And Cielito Lindo on page 245 is in the key of, let's see here, A, right? They still only use 3 kinds of chords, right? Those 1 chords, 4 chords, and 5 chords, okay? All right, so just make that observation, and then let's move on to slide 11. So let's talk about secondary chords. So the chords on scale degrees other than the tonic, dominant, and subdominant, right? 1, 5, or 4, are known as the secondary chords. So in other words, the secondary chords are your 2, 3, 6, and diminished 7 chords, okay? So you got your primary chords, 1, 4, and 5, secondary chords, 2, 3, 6, and 7 on those scale degrees. So now, perhaps do a Roman numeral analysis of Sweet Betsy from Pike, right, which is on page 275, and We Shall Overcome on page 281. And you should notice that these 2 songs are good illustrations of the use of secondary chords, right? Again, secondary chords being your 2, 3, 6, and diminished 7 chords, right? And these secondary chords just kind of they add interest and color to harmonization. Picking up with slide 13, let's talk about the harmonic system now in minor keys. So to begin understanding the harmonic system in minor keys, take a look at Pat a Pan on page 265 and do a Roman numeral analysis of the chords in this song. And remember to use uppercase Roman numerals for major triads and lowercase Roman numerals for minor triads. Then let's move on. So if you do that Roman numeral analysis of Pat a Pan, you should notice that there are only three kinds of chords, right? We've got E minor, right? And that's going to be your 1 chord. We've got A minor, and that's going to be your 4 chord. And we have B7. That's going to be your 5/7 chord, right? So E minor, A minor, and B7. Okay, so these three chords contain all the tones of the E minor scale in its harmonic form. Remember that harmonic minor scale? So if you recall your E harmonic minor scale, right, we have that 1 sharp in it, right, because it's the relative minor of G major. So E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. But then we have to raise the 7th scale degree, D, to D sharp, right? Then that makes it the harmonic minor scale, right? And so, right, these three chords, they contain all the tones of this E minor harmonic minor scale, right? You got E, G, B in the first one, and then you got A, C, E in the 4 chord, and then you've got B, D, F sharp, right? So in all of them, it adds up to E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D sharp, E. Okay, moving on here. So most harmony in minor keys derives from the harmonic form of the scale. And the illustration below shows the triads on each scale degree in the harmonic minor form. Okay, so if we go through these, we've got, okay, our 1 chord here is E minor. Then we've got our 2 diminished chord, because it's F sharp, A, C, and then a 3 augmented chord, right? Remember that one with the raised 5th scale degree? And then we have our 4 chord, A minor, and then our 5 chord, B, D sharp, F sharp, right? That's a B major triad. And then our 6 chord is going to be just C, E, G, right? A C triad. And then our 7, then we have a 7 diminished chord, D sharp, F sharp, A, right? And that's a 7 diminished, and then back to our 1 chord here. Okay, moving on here to slide 16. So now take a listen to Go Down Moses, right? And check it out on page 248 and do a Roman numeral analysis. And if you do this, you should find, again, that the primary chords are used exclusively, right? In this case, Go Down Moses is in the key of A minor. And so you have your 1 chord, that's going to be A minor, and then your 4 chord, D minor, and then your 5 chord, E major. Okay, so now moving on to slide 17. Keep in mind that although the primary chords in the harmonic minor form appear most often, some songs use the full harmonic resources of the minor scale, right? Meaning they might use the natural minor or melodic minor forms of the minor scale. So this little chart here shows the minor scale in all 3 of its forms, natural, harmonic, and melodic, and contains a wide variety of chords, right? Because each one's a little bit different, right? Like we learned back when we studied minor scales earlier this semester. So now if you can do a Roman numeral analysis of green sleeves, right, on page 250 in your book, and here you'll notice that Greensleeves borrows from several different, Greensleeves borrows from natural, harmonic, and melodic minor scales, right? So we can see here on my Roman numeral analysis of this tune, we have our 1 chord, that's E minor, right? Then our next chord is F sharp minor, right? And that so it's just a minor chord here. And that, if you're looking at the chart on slide 18, you see, okay, that one must be from the melodic minor scale, because that's the only one with a minor 2, right? Because harmonic minor and natural minor, the 2 chord is diminished. So watch out for that. Then we see our next chord in Greensleeves is B minor, right? And with B minor, right, which minor scale does that come from? Well, we can see which one has a minor 5. That's natural minor. So, and then the next one we have back to E minor, and then back to B minor. Then we've got, okay, E minor, and then F sharp minor, that's our 2 chord, and B minor, our minor 5 chord from the natural minor, then E minor again. Then we have B7. So now this one's different than the B minor, right? Because this one's a B dominant 7 chord. And that one is going to come from, if we're looking here, either harmonic minor or melodic minor, right? So you can kind of see that Greensleeves borrows from all 3 of these in some way, shape, or form. So now let's talk about circle progressions. So the strongest harmonic progressions in tonal music are those consisting of major and minor triads and the 7th chords built on these triads, whose roots are a perfect 5th apart, right? That tonic and dominant relationship. So the descending 5th or ascending 4th progressions, known as circle progressions, are also particularly strong and are known as circle progressions, okay? Or sometimes circle 5th progressions. So let's take a look at one of these circle progressions. So the illustration here on slide 20 shows one such circle progression. So notice that circle progressions, they're written as ascending 4th progressions, right? And we're talking about the interval of the 4th, right? Okay, so if we take like this, okay, so we got in the key of C major, our 1 chord is C, then our 4 chord, right, we're ascending a 4th, is F, and then we descend a 5th, right? And that gets us to our 7 diminished. But then if we ascend a 4th, then we end up with our 3 chord, and then we descended a 5th. Below that, we get to a 6 chord. Then we ascend a 5th above that, and then we end up at our 2 chord. Then we descend a 5th from there. We end up at our 5 chord, and then we ascend a 4th from there, our 1, right? So our circle progression, it's just ascending 4ths or descending 5ths. So again, we have our 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And that's what's called a circle progression. Okay, kind of, you start on your 1 chord and you sort of do a circle around 4ths and 5ths and end up back at the 1 chord. Okay, so now let's take a look at a song that uses a circle progression here. So, or uses many different little instances of a circle progression. So if we look at Morning Has Broken on page 260, right, This particular song contains 18 harmonic progressions. So we just mean from one chord to another, right? So the first chord that we see, C to D minor, right, counts as a harmonic progression. Although that one's not considered a circle progression because it doesn't go by a fourth. So 7 of these are circle progressions. So the ones that we see connected with a line are considered circle progressions. So circle progressions in this case, we're just referring to anything that's an ascending fourth or a descending fifth relationship. Okay, so if you kind of look through these, we see that, okay, our first chord is C, right? And then our next chord is D minor, right? So that's not a circle progression because that's just a second relationship, right? From C to D is a second. But the next one from D minor to G, that would be considered a circle progression because that's an ascending fourth, right? D to G, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a fourth, right? And then our next one from G to F, not a circle progression because that's a second. Then our next one is a descending fourth. So that's not going to count either because it has to be, if it's descending, it's got to be a fifth. Then our next chord to E minor, right? That's just a third relationship from C. So that's not one. But this next one from E to A, or E minor to A minor, right? That would be the circle progression. Okay, because that's a fourth relationship. So you can kind of see what we're talking about here with these circle progression relationships.